Thank you for joining me on this program. It's my distinct pleasure today to welcome onto our show Arun SHOURIE. Now, of course, all of us know who he is: economist, author, newspaper editor, and politician, of course. And so he's here in the city on a very short break. It's our pleasure to have him on our show. Mr. SHOURIE, thank you very much indeed. No exaggeration that I have been a fan for many years. Okay, that's not a good way to start, but you have come to talk about judicial activism, and I was just wondering, do you think we have enough of that in our country?
Well, yes and no. Each of us wants the courts to be active in a cause in which we believe in. But when it's the cause we don't like, then we don't want them to be very active.
Right.
And I feel that the courts sometimes are quite enthusiastic. No, the first point is that the courts have become active by necessity when the executive has not discharged its functions, as on environment sometimes, child labor, bonded labor, prisoners in courts, prisoners in jails who under trials. So all those were good. But I feel also that while I am for such activity of the courts, sometimes they have gone overboard, and therefore we should judge their activism on criteria which are independent of the causes.
Right.
The cause in which they have pronounced.
Right.
For instance, I feel that there are several judgments in which the courts have said things which actually puncture the one dike constructed by the Supreme Court, which has saved India from the excesses of legislatures, like the doctrine of the basic structure, which we owe to Mr. Palkhiwala. And the courts, in their enthusiasm, have used passages in several judgments which actually undermine that doctrine. And I would think that that's not very good. I mean, that's activism of a kind, but it's wrongly placed or excessive enthusiasm.
A little over the top, really, shall we say, right? Now, the Palkhiwala Memorial Lecture is going to deal with that. How do you think it's going to be accepted and received?
I wouldn't know. I will just present my own views. Some of these arise from a book of mine. There are two books of mine on Supreme Court judgments. One is called The Courts and Their Judgments, and the other one is called Falling Over Backwards. And the second book is actually, it takes into the news peg is the court's judgments on reservations. I feel that reservations is the wrong thing. We should have positive help. Somebody can't retain because of poor nutrition, give him free meals. He doesn't have place in his home for studying, free dormitories. He can't afford a computer, free computers. All that is good. But when you start at the race, everybody should be equal. But the courts have legitimized things which were explicitly ruled out in the Constitution when it was framed. Each time they have tried to keep a small dike, the Parliament has come and amended the Constitution. But the further problem is that in the next round, the courts legitimized the new amendment. They had said that if you do this, it will be completely unconstitutional. And just because now the Parliament has amended the Constitution doesn't make all those principles go away. And therefore, that is one point that is made in the book. The second difficulty I feel is that it's the quality of judicial reasoning which has really gone down quite a lot in the last 30 years. And I've reviewed cases in this regard, judgments since the early 1950s. And the quality of those judgments was quite high. Even the writing was so much better. Today it just seems that somebody had 5, 6 different things written, and they just sort of stitched them together.
Right. And of course, while we're on this subject of the judiciary, I mean, Mamata Banerjee, she's really kind of stirred it up, hasn't she? What do you think about that? What we're facing at the moment?
It's not quite clear. She says she didn't say it, and the media played it up, and so on. But if she said that the judgments are being bought, then certainly she should be put to producing evidence on that matter.
Right. But sir, having said that, we had seen a lot of fairly eminent people who've actually come out and sort of said, well, the lower judiciary, you know, it's happening and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, that's corruption. No doubt on that. There's no doubt. But I feel there's a stronger problem. It transcends the judiciary. No
Yes.
judge could have been bribed without the intercession and intermediation of lawyers.
True.
Yes. And the only way injustice is meted out is not just by monetary bribing. For instance, by adjournments. You just exhaust the other side.
Never ending.
Yes.
Never ending, yes.
So corruption should be defined much more widely when it relates to injustice.
Right. Corruption, I know this is, it's such an ugly word now for us. I mean, as we sit here, isn't it something we should really be ashamed about? Mr.
Of course,
Shourie?
because it's not a scandal.
It's bad news.
It is not a scandal, it is cancer, and it is a galloping cancer. You know, when I wrote about Mr. Antule and he
Yes.
had to go,
Yes.
the amount was 5 crores. Today, just imagine, it would not even wet their teeth.
I know. 5 crores is peanuts,
Yeah.
really, peanuts, yes.
And but on the remedial side, I do not agree with Mr. Anna Hazare and others who think that the remedy is to set up yet another institution. Because in India, we set up institutions, they become, 5 years later, the institution is still there and the problem is even bigger.
Right.
And the institution becomes a new problem.
Yes.
And you'll set up a Lokpal and it will become yet another court,
Yeah.
the same lawyers, the same adjournments will come. So we should try to work the existing institutions.
How to do that?
Well, for instance, in the case of, let's take corruption as an
Yes,
example.
please.
Just now what you mentioned, the first change should be on cases involving public servants, there shall be no adjournments at all.
Absolutely.
Look at the Madoff, $50 billion unaccounted in the United States. In 3 months, the man is in jail serving a life sentence. Whether we agree with the conviction of Raja Ratnam or Mr. Rajat Gupta or something, but in 3 months the trial is over.
Yes.
Here, for 12 years, it's not even in the lower court. So, no adjournments. Second change I would think is that the rule of evidence in regard to public servants should be changed. Today it is that when you find under a Minister of Communications bed 4.5 crores in cash, which happened,
Yeah.
he is still not convicted. Trial is still going on, 14 years have gone. He makes and unmakes governments in his states. Now, the CBI has to prove beyond reasonable doubt that he could not have saved this money out of his salary.
His earnings, yeah, right.
But the rule in other countries is, and should be in India, the preponderance of probability, not beyond reasonable doubt. When you find that much cash in a person's room, who's a public servant, then the probability, the preponderance of probability is that he could not have got it from his salary, and the onus is on him to prove his innocence.
Where he got it from, right.
That's the second change.
Yeah.
The third very simple change is that when you punish them, the punishment must be exemplary, and it must not be a fine. These people have no difficulty in paying fines. It must involve physical incarceration, and it must mean being barred from public life for life.
Right. So it should really be something that hurts, right?
Yes.
Right.
And just these 3 simple changes in the law, and not yet another institution with the existing laws and practices, which would mean
Means
nothing.
nothing at all, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Shourie, I'm going to ask you to hang on for just a very short while. We take a very quick break here and reconnect, and we'll get right back with you. Please don't go anywhere.